This is John for Global Traveler. Today I'm talking travel with travel writer Jessica Dunham. How are you?
Hi, John. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's very nice to meet you. I followed you online and it's good to talk to you. And let's just jump right in because we've got a lot to talk about travel writing and all sorts of fun stuff. So give us a brief bio. How did you come about the career of writing or travel writing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm an Arizona-based freelance writer, editor, and producer, all in the travel space. So before I became a freelance journalist, I was an editor of several travel guides and visitor guide magazines all throughout North America. So I worked for a publishing company where the only thing we did was travel magazines, visitor guides. So I had the great fortune to get to know a lot of cities in destinations really in the United States and Canada by way of being the editor of their travel guide. So when I went freelance, I just took all that knowledge and started writing for magazines and being a contributing author for books, and then eventually writing my own books.
So did you have a big interest in travel before your career started, or did it come about through your career?
I think, like anyone, I had a personal healthy interest in travel, especially road trips. Love a good road trip. And so, in my non working time, I was traveling quite a bit. And when I got started with my career, so professionally speaking, I was doing a lot of lifestyle and food type writing. And then when I got hired at this publishing house that did, strictly travel guides and visitor guides, I just dove headfirst into the travel space and never looked back. I mean, once you once you discover that each city or state or region has its own personality and its own story to tell, the opportunities are limitless for exploration, but also as a writer for covering it and telling people. So it is my very favorite thing to be the go-to person for all of my friends and family when they're like, hey, I have someone coming to town. Where should I take them? And I end up sending very long text messages of places to see and places to go.
So, in writing about all these cities and through your books and through your whatever freelance writing you do, how do you prevent yourself from kind of falling into like a same pattern of writing about like making it like a template? How do you avoid that?
That's a great question. I think it's hard to avoid, actually. I think it's really hard for any profession that you're in to, not get in that rut of the same old. For me personally, I would say I read a lot. So not only am I getting out there and pounding the pavement or getting in my car and doing the road trips to really explore things, I'm also a voracious reader, and not just a reader of other contemporary journalists, although I do take in a lot of magazine articles and travel articles. But I'm also a reader of books. And so what inspires me in a novel or a nonfiction piece inspires my writing for travel.
Makes total sense. You said you like road trips. What makes a great road trip?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I think it's such a personal question in a lot of ways, but uh, for me, what makes a great road trip is spontaneity, autonomy, right? Like you're in the driver's seat, kind of literally and figuratively. And then great weather and no traffic.
Well, yeah, I can't argue with those. But you
Yeah.
now you mentioned an interesting point. You said spontaneity and autonomy. Have you ever been on a trip where basically you took quote unquote the back seat, no pun intended, where like other people were in charge and you were just along for the ride?
Yes, I have. And there is a wonderful freedom in that as well, especially for myself, who is usually the one planning a road trip or putting kind of getting the wheels in motion, so to speak, for the trip. I have absolutely enjoyed letting someone else do all the planning and just kind of letting myself be surprised about where we're going, what exit we're taking, what restaurant we're eating at, what hotel we're going to be staying at. So I also find a joy in that as well. I know that isn't true for everybody. Some people just can't let
Well, I was
go.
gonna say, but while you might enjoy it for the most part, is there a part of you that like just wants to take a little bit of control, or do you just let yourself go and say, "I'm going with this"?
I think, again, speaking for me, it's less about being able to take control, and it's more like kind of having that, when I say autonomy, having that flexibility to change my mind, maybe,
Okay.
as opposed to, say, like air travel or a cruise, where you definitely like you have to be on the plane at a certain time. And if there's a great sunset, you're not going to be able to stop and take a picture because you have to make your flight. And so that is what I find so beautiful about road trips is if I want to linger a little longer at a scenic viewpoint, I can, because I can readjust my schedule by 2 hours and, get to the hotel a little bit later than I was going to. And I find a lot of fulfillment in that.
So what would you say, like percentage wise, is for a road trip for you? Percentage wise of planned out versus winging it.
Ooh, well, it's been different for various road trips, and it's been different over the years. I have found in my younger years, the percentage of planning was much lower,
Okay.
like more like 20% planning, 80%. Let's just go where whimsy takes me. And as I've gotten older, and also my husband and I travel quite a bit with our two dogs. And so traveling, road tripping with dogs requires more planning, especially in terms of booking accommodations that are pet
Sure.
friendly. So I would say now that has maybe switched, maybe 70-30. So
Oh,
70% is planned and
okay.
30% is just up for whatever.
So all right, let's jump that into specific road trips. You wrote a book, one of your books, The Open Road 50 Best Road Trips. How did you determine the 50 best? Did you have a list of like
Impossible.
100 and then whittle it down or
Yeah, well, I can tell you it was impossible. And I can tell you since the book has been out, I have jotted notes down for 50 more road trips. Like there are so many possibilities. But I worked with the wonderful editors at Moon Travel Guides, which is the publishing company for the Open Road. And together with them, we came up with a big list, right? So I don't remember how many were on the original list, maybe like 120 or something. And from that, we cherry picked some of those more classic, legendary road trips, like Route 66, of course, and the Pacific Coast Highway. We knew we had to have those in. So they were sort of shoe-ins. And then after that, it was a little bit of like, well, what are some of my favorite road trips? What are some of the hidden gems that I've done before that I think maybe a lot of people would be surprised about? We included those. And then we really tried to account for regionality. So obviously, California kind of has its own section, but there's just so much to explore in California on the roads, even just the coastline. But we tried to get everything in. So from Florida to Washington State, from Maine to, Arizona, where I am, that was our kind of our third tier of how do we determine is we need to get in as many places in the United States as possible.
and am I correct? Did Chicago not make that list?
Oh, Chicago's in there as
It
a starting
is.
point for a couple. Yes.
Okay. I
Yeah.
thought I did. I thought I read it. I didn't see Chicago, but it could have just been me.
The way that the road trips are named is some of them kind of have fun names. Like there's one called a West Texas road trip, but really it hits, 5 destinations.
Okay.
So Chicago actually makes an appearance in several road trips.
Oh, okay. I'm, just city pride.
Yeah.
That's
I
um,
understand. Chicago is one of my very favorite cities, so I understand.
oh, nice. So of all the cities you've been to hundreds of cities. Is there any city that where you went and now you look back and go, gee, I really need to go back there for this?
I would say every single place I've ever been to has always made me want to return. Truly, that's a true statement. Because as I said earlier, what I have learned as a curious traveler is that every destination is an onion. There's just so many layers to it. And once you really start allowing yourself to be open to what story that place is telling you and not necessarily what your expectations for it are, you'll want to return again and again. And like I said, Chicago is one of my all-time favorite cities, but that was after I had spent years living in New York City and have, had this sort of like mantle of New York is the greatest. And then I visited Chicago and found that Chicago has its own different thing. It's not you can't compare it to New York. It's not the
Right.
same. And that is what I have found with every single place I've ever been to. Whether it's like Gatlinburg in the Great Smoky Mountains or a small town in Kansas along the loneliest road, Route 50.
So is there any city or place, destination that really kind of surprised you that or maybe would surprise us and go like, oh, I never thought of that city as this that stands out for you?
Yeah, one of the road trips in the book is it's called the Lake Champlain Scenic Byway, and I have laid it out as a 3 day trip, so it's a short trip. But it ends in the islands of North Lake Champlain.
Wow.
So you actually start kind of in southern Lake Champlain or mid-range Lake Champlain, and you drive up the coast of the lake, and you end in South Hero Island and North Hero Island. And I just they're just these islands in the middle of Lake Champlain, and they are rife with vineyards and creameries and little farm stands and delightful motels that have docks where boats can just pull up and have
Oh,
a drink on the lawn. And it's such a hidden gem and completely surprised me. And ever since I discovered it, I have been back probably 4 or 5 times. I
wow.
try to take someone new every time I go. I love it.
Is there any place you haven't been that you want to go? Bucket list.
Oh, wow. Yeah, bucket list places. You know what's funny is I have only been driven, I only drove through this place, but I actually would love to go back and linger a little bit more, which is Reno,
Oh
Nevada.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I kind of developed a surprising love for Nevada when I researched The Loneliest Road for the book. The Loneliest Road takes you through some pretty isolated stretches in Nevada, and for whatever reason, it just struck me as so beautiful. And then you hit these, strange towns in Nevada, like Reno or something. And I would love to dive into Reno a little bit.
Okay, it's a good answer. Sure, it kind of takes a backseat to Vegas a lot when but you're right because I drove through Reno as well and kind of had the same thought. Um,
Yeah.
Another one of your books was Route 66, the road trip. Now, this one really interests me because there's a lot of books about Route 66. So, what makes your book different?
Oh, wow. I just saw a book on Route 66 about haunted places on Route 66, and I was like, that's a good idea. That's what I should have done. But I think what I would suggest to readers who are looking for a Route 66 guidebook is that my book that I have is a turn by turn itinerary of Route 66, meaning I will take you mile by mile, step by step, and tell you exactly where to stay, where to eat. I mention people that I've met along Route 66, business owners and other characters who live and work on Route 66 who you should meet. And I think that there's so much on Route 66. There's so much history, and I include quite a bit of it. But I try to do it in a way that also makes it very traveler friendly. So no matter where you are, you can find a little bit of history, but you can also find a place to stay, and you can also find a place to eat. You can also find a place to take a great photo. It's all in the book. It is everything you could possibly need to get you from Chicago to Santa Monica without having to lift a finger. Well, except for driving, of course.
Yeah, yeah. You want to have your hands on the steering wheel.
Yes, hands on the wheel at all times, please.
It's always a good idea. So, in Route 66, like how many days roughly would that take you?
I recommend, I mean, you can do it any kind of way. In the book, I recommend 14 days. So
Okay.
it's a 2 week journey. I have certainly done it shorter because you can make up some time in some of the places where the original alignments aren't really in existence anymore. So you can go a little bit faster, but I would say if you really want to enjoy it and soak up all the sights, I'd recommend 2 weeks.
So I'm going to kind of ask you a similar question I asked before, but more towards travel. How do you keep travel special? How do you make it so that you're not just going on another trip?
Hmm. Gosh, that's a great question. I mean, a little bit is just pure love of discovery and finding new things and learning new things about myself too. With every road trip I've ever taken, I discover something new. that interests me. So I think that is kind of a bit of the magic that keeps me going. I think the other thing is, having traveled so much, I also have sort of like tips and tricks that make things go smoothly. I think sometimes travel can be overwhelming for people because of all of the, what should I pack and how many bags should I bring and what's all the red tape that's going to involve. And I think the more travel you do, the more you can find what works for you. And that once you kind of get all that gunk out of the way, it frees you up to enjoy what's so fun about travel is, you're untethered from your daily routines. You're untethered from your work obligations. You're allowed to just be.
Well, you kind of stole my next question. I was going to ask for your travel tip from your years of experience, but you kind of already answered that. So I will ask you then. You said you've learned a lot during your travel. What do you think is like the biggest thing that you learned about yourself through traveling?
I've learned that I don't know anything.
Join the club.
I always think that I know what a place is going to be like, or I always, even now, after realizing that no person and no place is ever what you think it's going to be, I still bring a little of an expectation to certain things. And so that is something I've learned about myself, is I know nothing, and that's a good thing because it allows me to let people teach me things and learn things. And I've also learned that it's the people in destinations that really make up the heart and soul of a place. I'm all for natural beauty and hiking to the peak of a mountain and getting up early for a sunrise photo. I'm all for that sort of stuff. But I think my dearest memories that I take away after a great trip are those people that I've kind of opened myself up to meeting in any place I've ever been.
And what's your go-to food place? You go into a place, what's your go-to food? Or does
Oh,
it
well,
depend on the place?
it 100% depends on the place. Road tripping around the United States has taught me that we have all the food here. We have, in the United States, in our country, we have every single type of food by way of all of the cultures that are here and making up our country. So, like when I was in Marfa, Texas, there's a wonderful place called Marfa Burrito that you have to go to. All those tortillas are made right there when you first walk
Oh,
in.
heaven.
If you're coming to Arizona, here where I live, you got to get a Sonoran hot dog, which is a hot dog that comes with all of these fabulous Mexican food toppings. If you're in Annapolis, Maryland, you have to get blue crab. So my goal when dining out, when I travel, is I just find what's the local specialty. I'm going to try it once. I
Makes
may
sense.
not like it, but I'm going to try it once.
Well, I'll give you my tip for Chicago because everybody always, it's always the deep dish, the deep dish. If you come to Chicago, find a thin crust pizza.
John, that I got that tip from another Chicagoan, and that's now the only thing I do is I try to find great thin crust when I come to Chicago. So I'm so glad you said that.
It's really the big secret about Chicago. The deep dish gets all the press, but the thin crust is really where the best is.
You guys have the best thin crust too. There's something about like the crackery crust. Like I don't know if it's like in your water or something, but like no one can replicate it.
It is good, and I eat plenty of it. Jessica, really, I appreciate your time. I love talking travel with you. Before I let you go, tell everybody where they can find information about you and your books.
Yeah, thank you. The book is available wherever books are sold, Barnes and Noble, Target. You can also get it online at moon.com. And if you want to follow my travels, go to dunham-media.com. That's me.
That sounds perfect. Jessica, really, I appreciate your time. It's been a lot of fun talking about travel. Maybe next year we could do a little update, see where the road is taking you since.
I would love that. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. You take care.
You too.